They didn't fire me because I made a mistake. They fired me because I made them uncomfortable. Because I asked a question no one wanted in the audit log. Who has the right to bypass risk when the cost is paid by people not in the room? My name is Miles Ashford. For 12 years, I wrote the logic trees behind one of the largest dual-use supply chain systems in North America. Civilian and defense, food and firewalls. What we made could stock a warehouse or lock down a satellite. I wasn't a leader. I wasn't a face. I was the one they sent compliance requests to at midnight, the one who fixed what automation couldn't catch. The ghost in the Gantt chart. The name in the corner of every final protocol doc. I designed the SafeBox protocol, an internal continuity safeguard that only triggered if someone like me disappeared, without a traceable exit chain. And last Monday someone pulled that trigger. Not on purpose. They just thought I wasn't essential. The system didn't crash. That would have been too obvious. It slowed. Inventory started rerouting in loops. Supplier ID numbers mismatched. A single phrase began blinking on an internal dashboard in a warehouse near Dayton. Heartbeat amber, awaiting custodian override. They ignored it. Then procurement froze. Then the export documentation failed checksum validation. Then the quiet questions started. I didn't answer any of them. 3 weeks ago, before any of this, I was called into a windowless room they pretended was a collaboration pod. New leadership, new initiatives. A laminated roadmap taped to the wall with words like streamline AI first, zero legacy overhead. I listened. I watched. And when they reached the part where my division would be absorbed into a governance automation pilot, I asked one thing. Who's reviewing the failover logic? They blinked. One of them said the AI will handle escalation. That was the moment I knew they didn't understand the system. Not what it did. Not how it held together. Not the humans it quietly protected. A week later, they handed me a transition memo. Soft words. Empty thanks. They thought they were being kind. They didn't realize they'd removed the one person who knew where the skeleton key was buried. The truth is, I didn't make a copy of the system. I was the system. I didn't document in Jira. I documented in a vault that required a biometric handoff. One I offered once, and was told that's too paranoid, Miles. So when they revoked my badge and shut off my Slack ID, the heartbeat trigger kicked in. It wasn't revenge. It was design. That morning I sat at my kitchen table watching the live incident report queue. Stutter. Orange lights. Timeouts. Delays. Nothing explosive. Just friction. Enough to start the slide. They called it a hiccup in the DevOps relay. They'd blame the cloud vendor first, then the middleware team, then the team that didn't exist anymore, mine. And in 3 days, they'd realize something no dashboard could explain. You don't get to fire the firewall and keep the protection. I didn't want this. I built SafeBox to protect people, not trap them. But protection only works when leadership respects the risk. I didn't leave a back door. I left a failsafe. And right now it's waiting for someone to realize that someone's missing. If you've ever worked somewhere that ran on systems no one understood. If you've ever seen someone quietly hold everything together while the loud ones took the credit. If you've ever watched the room realize too late who mattered most, hit that subscribe button. Not because I need attention, but because stories like this happen more than people admit. And someone should tell them clean, cold, real. Most people think systems fail when something breaks. That's not true. They fail when someone makes a shortcut they never document. I learned that the hard way. Not in a classroom, not in theory, but in a backroom office 5 years ago, when a shipment flagged red on our internal chain because a junior exec deleted a cross-check field to save 6 seconds per entry. 6 seconds. And because of that, a $12 million contract was nearly terminated. 3 vendors were flagged as non-compliant. One of them, a veteran-owned micro facility in New Hampshire, went bankrupt before the mistake was corrected. All because someone pushed a system they didn't understand, and no one stopped them. I carried that collapse with me. Still do. That's when I started building SafeBox. Not as a punishment, as insulation. A layer the loud ones couldn't reach. They talked about innovation. I built stability. They pitched efficiency. I wrote in redundancy. They wanted dashboards and upward arrows. I gave them the one thing they didn't value until it vanished: resilience. We were a small team back then, 10 of us. Procurement, supply chain, 2 compliance analysts. and me writing logic trees at 2 a.m. with bad coffee and a whiteboard no one else touched. We weren't flashy. We didn't do town halls or post wins on Slack, but we kept the pulse of the company clean. If someone faked an invoice, we saw it. If a batch skipped QA, we stopped it. The execs never noticed. That was the point. Real protection is invisible until it isn't. I remember Marla from QA. She used to say you're the quietest person in every meeting, and somehow the loudest in every escalation. I never replied, didn't need to. She was right. The system didn't need volume. It needed witnesses. In those years, I logged everything. Not to protect myself, to protect the chain. We worked with dual-use components. Civilians didn't know it, but 30% of our shipments were subject to federal compliance. You couldn't just push to production without tripping an audit trail. Except, that's exactly what new leadership wanted to do. They called it velocity optimization. They meant cut the people who ask questions. When the new CTO arrived, he brought a roadmap in PDF form. Slide 12 said, Legacy compliance dependencies, phase out by Q3. I was sitting in the back. No name badge. No title on the agenda. He pointed at my division's name and said, these controls slow us down. Then looked around the room and asked, what's the worst that could happen? Nobody answered. I did. The worst isn't failure. It's silence right before something irreversible. He smiled, dismissed it as fear of change. 2 weeks later, they ran a beta of their new AI-driven procurement pipeline. It bypassed 3 embedded risk checks. The system didn't crash. It paused, hesitated, like a living thing holding its breath. The logs showed non-conforming behavior across 42 nodes. No one noticed. I did, and I didn't fix it. That was the first time in my career I didn't patch a break I didn't make. Not out of pride, out of protocol. SafeBox had detected the breach condition custodian revoked without continuity handoff. It didn't shut anything down. It just waited, paused, like a camera on a tripwire, ready to log every step into the dark. I still have the notebook. Spiral-bound, coffee-stained, the margins full of notes no one but me could parse. Line 42 on page 7 says, don't overcorrect. Let them drift. If they override, escalate to watch. They overrode the failover threshold last Friday. That's why the warehouse lit up in amber. That's why half their outbound manifests are now stuck in review loops. Not because the system broke, but because they removed the only person who knew how to interpret the pauses. I've always believed systems aren't technical. They're human. And when humans forget how trust was built, the system remembers. You don't erase lineage just because it's inconvenient. You don't fire the one person holding the spine together and expect the limbs to keep moving. They thought they upgraded, streamlined, leaned in. But what they really did was amputate. Quietly. Without anesthesia. Now the data isn't syncing. The audit trails are branching out like veins with no heart. And somewhere in a server room they don't even know exists. A process is counting time backwards. I didn't set it to explode. I set it to observe. To mark. To remember who failed whom first. Tuesday, 10:42 a.m. Somewhere in the Chicago distribution hub, a pallet flagged itself for re-verification. Nothing dramatic, just a soft ping in the local dashboard. A line item went from green to amber. It shouldn't have. There was no human input, no AI override, no system error logged. Just amber. And a single line of text. Custodian override required. User not recognized. No one noticed the first time. Not really. The floor manager shrugged it off as a sync hiccup. The lead on duty resubmitted the entry manually. It cleared. But then it happened again. And again. Each time a little slower. Each time a little heavier. By the time it hit the internal Slack thread for supply chain ops, it had been classified as a transient validation anomaly. The kind of phrase people invent when they don't know what's wrong but don't want to admit it. Jerome was the first to message me. We hadn't spoken in 6 months. He used to handle legacy compliance certs. Quiet guy. Trusted the system more than the people in charge of it. His message was short. Did you build in a kill switch? Something's off. They're pretending it's fine, but it's not. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because once you step out of a system, you don't just plug back in. You wait. You observe. You listen for the pressure changes. By Wednesday, the finance lead in procurement started getting emails from vendors. Nothing angry, just confused. Our order was flagged as invalidated. Can you confirm if there's a new validation layer? Why is our access to Project Phoenix classified unknown authorization tree? Who is the new compliance contact? No one is replying. The internal dashboard started taking longer to load. Not frozen, just breathless, like it was stalling for time. And then came the first real lockout. Shipment, WAMZO 1982Q, bound for a federal facility under Tier 3 classification. Auto rejected by the system. Message. Access key expired. Custodian not present. Escalate to continuity tree. Problem was, no one knew what that meant. The continuity tree wasn't in the public documentation, because I never wrote it down. Not in Confluence, not in SharePoint, not even in the internal wiki. It lived in a private vault fingerprint, protected, air-gapped, and built under a clause no one at that table had ever read. Clause 47, subpoint B. All Tier 3 operational handoffs require verified signature and biometric from originating custodian or fallback logic defaults, freeze state. No signature, no handoff, no fallback. Just amber and silence. Someone in IT tried to force an override. They got locked out of their own admin panel for 12 minutes. Not a hack, not ransomware. Just procedure. SafeBox doesn't retaliate. It pauses. It warns. Once, Michelle from Internal Risk pinged Jerome that night. She'd been there longer than me. She once reviewed every single vendor contract by hand before AI took over. Michelle's gift wasn't paranoia. It was pattern recognition. She saw what others dismissed. The manual overrides that failed. The timing of rejections tied to Tier 3 and Tier 4 projects only. The fact that all of this started within 24 hours of me being removed. They didn't mention me in meetings, but I know the rhythm of people avoiding my name. Meeting notes used phrases like legacy protocol unknown and root dependency unclear. Someone started calling it the Ashford layer in private threads. The board hadn't been told. Legal hadn't been briefed. Instead, the new CTO ordered an integrity sprint. 12 engineers tasked with reverse engineering the compliance spine I spent 9 years hardening. They didn't find what they were hoping for. Instead, they found trace phrases like integrity chain lock flags manual override condition absent custodian. If auth chain. Verified then status. Deny soft. Else proceed. The phrases looked like code, but they weren't. They were warnings. Jerome sent me one more message, this time with a screenshot. It was a terminal window with a blinking line. One message repeated in white. Failsafe active. Custodian Ashford.m awaiting override. Time since escalation 73:48:12. He didn't ask me to fix it. Didn't even ask if I was watching. He just wrote, they're not saying it out loud, but they're scared. That's the thing about collapse. It never starts with noise. It starts with silence. With dashboards that hesitate. With files that flicker but don't load. With processes that almost finish then stall. Collapse doesn't explode, it decays. And right now they're just starting to smell it. Thursday morning, 08:14 a.m. The internal calendar auto-generated a meeting labeled Emergency Systems Sync. Mandatory. No subject line, no host, just a location conference room 7B. That's how you know it's real. When no one wants their name attached. They trickled in compliance, DevOps, logistics, legal. Someone had printed a screenshot. Terminal window, 3 lines still blinking. Failsafe active. Custodian Ashford.m awaiting override. Time since escalation, 97:12:39. No one spoke right away. Then Michelle, still calm, said, we need to talk about the spine. They danced around it for 20 minutes. Blamed AI regression, legacy permissions, transitional friction. But the logs were too clean. The denial states were deliberate, not random, not accidental. Jerome pointed out that batch authentication had defaulted to hold status for all Tier 3 outgoing shipments. He tapped the screen. It's not freezing, it's quarantining. One of the younger engineers, Devin, asked the obvious. Why would the system wait 3 days to act? Michelle didn't even look up. Because it's not reacting, it's observing. Silence. Then legal finally broke. We need to know if this Ashford protocol is legal. That's when someone said my name out loud. Not whispered, not hinted. Just said it. Miles Ashford wrote the chain. He's the only one who would know where the logic ends. Devin frowned. I thought he was just ops compliance. Michelle shook her head. No. He wrote the continuity core. That's the moment the room changed. You could feel it. The realization that what they'd dismissed was now holding them still. Someone joked weakly, "We should just call him." No one laughed. Meanwhile, I watched from a distance. Not through their cameras. Through their patterns. Their pauses. A soft alarm in the back end had triggered overnight. It wasn't a breach, it was a signature. A vendor escalation pushed upstream from one of our oldest contractors. I recognized the ID. LTH Systems. They'd been with us since the beginning, back when we were just trialing integration for dual-use shipments. They didn't call procurement. They didn't ping ops. They called the legal hotline. And they asked one question. Is Miles Ashford still the custodian of record for Project Saturn? That wasn't a casual question. That was a compliance check. One that by regulation triggers an audit flag. The message hit the audit inbox at 0907. Internal routing tagged it red. Not for risk. For escalation. Michelle read it first. She didn't forward it. She printed it and walked it in person to the General Counsel. At CU 929, the General Counsel called the CTO. The call lasted 6 minutes. Nobody knows what was said. But by 0940, the CTO messaged the security lead. Check if Ashford's credentials were fully revoked. A few minutes later, the reply came back. Badge deactivated, Slack ID purged. But system logs show logic chain still references ashford.m in continuity node. No transfer logged, no override filed. That's not a glitch. That's a breach of contract. By 10:00 a.m., procurement had frozen all outbound classified materials pending review. DevOps was split. Half the team wanted to roll back the last system patch. The other half argued that doing so might trip a deeper trigger. Nobody was willing to be the one who hit enter. And then came the ping from outside. Not Slack, not email. Board mail. 8:00 a.m. timestamp. Pre-scheduled. Subject line. Defense Logistics Compliance Notification. Tier 3 custodial discrepancy identified. The email wasn't angry, it was worse. Neutral. Clinical. Like a knife laid gently on a table. The final line read, "Please prepare to submit all documentation related to custodian transfer of record. Review team will initiate first contact Friday at 0900 hours. Friday. That gave them 23 hours. 23 hours to explain why the person still holding system clearance had been removed without protocol. Why the project backbone had no assigned custodian. Why the only name tied to continuity logic hadn't signed anything. Why I was still showing as active in the parts of the system they couldn't edit. They didn't call me. Not yet. They were still hoping someone had missed something. That a setting could be flipped. That some admin script could rewrite what was never documented. But deep down, they were starting to understand. You can't revoke what was never delegated. You can't overwrite a failsafe if the system doesn't recognize you. And you can't bury the architect if the walls still whisper his name. Thursday, 11:52 a.m. The emergency sync spilled into a second hour. Legal was blaming ops. Ops was blaming DevOps. DevOps blamed documentation. Documentation, as always, was silent. Michelle had stopped talking. She just sat there, arms crossed, watching the chaos, as if she'd seen it all before. Because she had. The CTO paced like a man trying to outrun the room. "We need to reset the chain. Build a manual override key. Something." Jerome spoke up finally. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut clean. "You can't override something you don't control." The CTO turned. "Then who does—" Jerome didn't answer right away. He just looked down at the terminal window still open on his laptop. The blinking line hadn't changed. "Failsafe active. Custodian Ashford.m awaiting override." A silence spread through the room. No one wanted to be the first to say it. Michelle broke it. "We removed the only person the system recognizes as an authority." Legal replied, defensive. "He was off-boarded with HR protocol. That's a clean separation." Michelle didn't even blink. "That's not how continuity works. Not at Tier 3. Not when federal audit trails are involved." The General Counsel leaned forward. "Are you suggesting we contact him?" The CTO interrupted. "No." Quick, sharp, final. "We don't reward sabotage." Jerome exhaled through his nose. "You think this is sabotage?" "He built SafeBox," the CTO snapped. "He chose not to document it. That's deliberate." Michelle countered. "No, that's secure. You don't publish your vault key in a PDF." Someone from logistics whispered. "He warned us. Last year. Said if continuity ever failed, the system would default to containment." No one replied, because everyone remembered the meeting. The way Miles had said it. I don't build systems that depend on trust. I build ones that verify absence. Back then, they thought it was a joke. Now it felt like prophecy. At 12:34 p.m., a shipment flagged red. Outbound manifest 882K, bound for a secondary defense contractor. Rejected. But not by the usual validation node. This time, the rejection came from deep inside the logic chain. From a process no one had touched in years. Message. Protocol handoff blocked. Authorization route invalid. Redirecting to custodian confirmed endpoint. They checked the logs. No one had initiated the redirect. No script had touched it. Yet the shipment rerouted physically. From loading dock 3 to the compliance vault at facility 1. Someone asked if it was a rollback. It wasn't. There was no rollback trigger live. Someone else checked audit trails. The log simply said, fallback logic triggered. Ashford, M Vault destination signature timestamp T384D. 384 days ago. Miles had signed the redirect logic more than a year before he was removed. That's the thing about real compliance. It doesn't need a boss. It just needs a custodian. And if you remove the custodian without replacing him, the system returns to its last known truth. And right now, the truth was Miles Ashford is still in charge. The CTO tried to spin it. Okay, so we know what node is causing this. We isolate it, rewrite the route, and push a patch. Jerome shook his head. You don't patch continuity logic like it's a UI bug. Then what the hell do we do? The CTO barked. Michelle's voice came quiet. We prepare for the audit. Outside the glass walls of the meeting room, someone knocked once. It was Carla from the defense liaison team. She stepped in holding a hard copy packet. This just came from the DLO. Formal confirmation. The Friday audit team will include a Tier 2 clearance validator. They'll expect full custodial chain documentation. And they've asked that Mr. Ashford be present. Or that we submit his legal replacement. No one moved. Because there was no replacement. Because there had never been a plan to replace him. Only to remove him. They didn't lose control. They gave it away. Quietly. Efficiently. With a smile and a transition memo. Fridays, 08:57 a.m. The building was silent. Not quiet silent. Not even the printers hummed. Downstairs in the lobby, 3 people stood with matching gray folders and unreadable eyes. They didn't announce themselves. Didn't flash badges. Just signed the visitor log and waited. By Oro 9, EOR 0, they were in conference room D. No fanfare. No opening statement. They didn't ask questions. They asked for one document. We need the custodian transfer authorization for Project Saturn, with timestamp and biometric verification. No one had it, because no one had filed it, because no one thought the system would care. But it did, because I did. Miles Ashford. The name no one wanted to say 3 days ago was now printed on 36 documents. Audit logs, keychain dependencies, failsafe registries. It didn't matter how many people had been promoted since I left. How many workflows they renamed. At the system level, I was still custodian of record. They'd revoked my badge. But not my fingerprint, not my logic signature. Because they didn't know where to find it. 10:12 a.m. The audit lead placed a small square device on the table. Fingerprint scanner, military grade, offline authenticated. He slid a form across the table. If Mr. Ashford is unavailable, we'll need the override request signed by the current authorized custodian. The room froze, because the override form had a field none of them could fill. Chain of custody linkage ID null. The system didn't recognize anyone, not the CTO, not the VP of compliance, not even the board chair, because none of them had ever been handed the system. They'd taken positions, but not custody. At 10:24, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Didn't speak. A pause, then Michelle's voice. They need you. I waited. You don't have to fix anything. Just show them it wasn't sabotage. That word again. Like they still couldn't say the truth. They erased the one person who kept the logic alive. I said one sentence. Clause 4.7, signed, with a name. They didn't hesitate. They knew exactly what I meant. Clause 4.7 was old, written years ago, never invoked. It stated that in the event of unauthorized custodian termination system, continuity could only be restored by the originating architect contingent upon re-execution of custody transfer by the responsible authority. In short, you fire me fine. But you sign your name next to it, this time in ink. And you sign it knowing what it means. By 11:05, the form was on its way. PDF, encrypted, Metadata locked. At the bottom, signature line, CTO's name, date, clause reference. I reviewed it once, then added my own. Handwritten, clean. Miles Ashford restored as custodian, temp status. Custody chain to remain pending until systemic realignment. That last line was important. I wasn't coming back. I was returning control, not taking it. Just long enough to stop the collapse. To let the system breathe again. 11:29 a.m. I remote authenticated from a secure node. The dashboard flared once, then settled. Amber faded. Green returned. Backlog started clearing. Redirections canceled. Someone from the audit team nodded slightly. Not thanks. Recognition. Upstairs, the CTO received a single notification. Continuity protocol acknowledged. Custodian verified. System heartbeat stabilized. He didn't reply. He just sat there, watching a system he thought he controlled start responding again. But not to him. I didn't stay on the line, didn't take questions, didn't ask for apologies. I just closed the session. Logged out, folded the signed form, slipped it into a drawer, and poured a cup of black coffee. No cream, no sugar. Just sharp and quiet. Like the system I built, like the people it was meant to protect. If you've ever kept a system running from the shadows, and watched the credit go to people who never logged in, hit that subscribe button. Some of us weren't invisible, just unacknowledged, until the system said our name. Friday, first 12 p.m., the dashboards were green again. No more flickering. No more amber warnings. No more frozen manifests. The shipments resumed. Outbound IDs verified. Tier 3 chains authenticated. Clearance checks passed in milliseconds. Everything looked normal, but no one in the room acted like it. Jerome noticed it first. The engineers weren't talking. Not about how they got it back online. Not about patching anything. Not about resolving root cause. Because deep down they knew. They hadn't fixed anything. I had. Michelle watched them from the edge of her terminal hands still on the keys, even though her screen had stopped blinking an hour ago. She didn't say much, but she was reading commit logs, tracing back the fingerprints. And she found mine. Not once, not twice. Dozens of times. Timestamps from 4 years ago, 3 years, 2. Some entries tagged redundant, others deprecated, but all still active, because I never removed them. I just built around the people who didn't see their value. At 2:37 p.m., Jerome sent me a message. 3 words. They're not pretending. I didn't respond. Didn't need to, because I could already see it. The way Slack threads slowed. The way certain names stopped getting tagged. The way Carla from Risk Compliance forwarded the audit summary without adding any commentary. That silence wasn't compliance. It was cold awareness of where the weak point had always been, and who had tried to mask it as progress. I wasn't back at the company, not really. I had access, temporary, custodial, scope to continuity, but no desk, no badge, no Slack account. Just a terminal, a secure node, a single black screen with green lines blinking steady like a heartbeat. I checked it once every hour, not to intervene, just to make sure no one touched the root node again. 3:10 p.m., a message leaked from a private executive thread. No one sent it to me, but it reached me, eventually. It was short. If we reinstate him formally, it implies we accept fault. Better to let the system settle and move on. Move on, as if that was an option, as if the system didn't keep logs, as if the audit team hadn't already downloaded the full authorization trail, as if the redirect last week didn't already leave a federal-level fingerprint. 4:00 p.m., someone in IT tried to reroute a reporting tree for compliance summaries. Nothing drastic, just an adjustment, a small one. It triggered a warning. Not an error, not a block. Just a yellow tag. Root custodian logic active. Contact required for structural updates. They closed the window, didn't try again. By 5:20, people had stopped pretending the CTO was in control. They still took his meetings, still nodded when he spoke, but nobody routed decisions through him anymore. Michelle passed her reports straight to the board liaison. Jerome paused on every request with the line, "Need continuity sign-off." And Carla, she asked a quiet question in the hallway. Wasn't it the CTO who ordered the offboarding? Without protocol review? No one answered. But everyone heard. The system ran, but not like before. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't clean. It was aware, like a body healing around a scar. I watched it from my side, didn't reach out, didn't demand anything. I wasn't angry. I was just still. The system had stabilized, but the trust hadn't. And systems in the end only reflect what they're built to protect. Right now, it wasn't data they were trying to preserve. It was blame, and it was already shifting. Monday, 07:42 a.m. The first message didn't come through Slack. It came through a private Proton Mail thread. Subject line, FYI. You should see this. No name, just a file. File name CTO, prior, thread extract.pdf. I opened it, read once. Didn't blink. Just watched the words reorder what people believed was true. It was a Slack export. A thread from 4 months ago. CTO Project Ops 1 Junior Counsel. We need to phase Ashford out before Q3. We can't trigger Clause 4.7. Just reassign quietly. Deactivate his access. Legal can backfill the record if needed. The AI initiative can't be delayed another quarter. And then 3 dots. No one responded for a beat. Then this. Just get it done before audit season. It wasn't dramatic. No profanity. No exclamation points. Just clean sentences. Clear intent. An internal execution order disguised as optimization. By 09:003 people had seen it. By 10:0012. By lunch, the board liaison had it printed on her desk. No one denied it. No one defended it. The CTO didn't speak. Not even when someone dropped the packet on his table in conference room F. He just stared at it. Didn't flip a page. Didn't push it away. Like it might vanish if he didn't move. Carla was the one who printed it. She didn't say it outright, but she left it out unclipped, unfolded, unshredded. Michelle found it during a handoff. She looked at the title page. Custodian Eviction Timeline, confirmed by legal. The date was from May, 2 months before they fired me. That was the turning point. Not when the system failed, not when I restored it, but when they realized it hadn't failed on its own. Someone had interfered. Someone had chosen speed over stewardship, AI transition over human continuity. And now that person sat in an office surrounded by people who used to call him visionary. Now they avoided eye contact. Jerome stopped responding to the CTO's messages. Carla forwarded everything straight to compliance. Michelle initiated a chain review of Tier 3 protocols, bypassing the CTO altogether. It wasn't mutiny. It was detachment. The kind that comes after disappointment calcifies into clarity. Someone in DevOps wrote a line of code at 1:17 p.m. It wasn't meant for me, but it found me anyway. A comment buried in the middle of a script. Ashford was right. Silence isn't safety. By 2:03, the CTO had requested a private call with the board. They declined. Instead, they requested a summary briefing from Carla. She sent 1 page. At the bottom, recommend temporary restriction of strategic access pending internal review. Custodian role now publicly acknowledged as source of structural resilience. Ashford is not requesting reinstatement. He doesn't need to. That line was the coldest, because it was true. I never asked to come back. Never filed for access. Never demanded apology. I just let the system speak louder than the titles. 3:10 p.m. The lights in the main collaboration room flickered. IT said it was unrelated. Power test. But no one believed that anymore. They all looked up at the LED status board mounted above the entry doors. It glowed amber for a second, then green again. Heartbeat steady. Alive. Silent. Watching. By 4:0, the audit report had a new section. Appendix F. Custodian Removal Risk. Michelle helped write it. Not to assign blame, but to log decisions, facts, timestamps, Slack threads. I didn't respond to the leak, didn't send a message, didn't issue a warning. But that night I opened the document. Scrolled to the bottom. There was a comment in the margin from Carla. Just a note. 3 words. He didn't leave. No, I didn't. I just stepped back. Let the system keep its own memory. And now it had begun to remember. Tuesday, 3:42 a.m. The dashboard was quiet. No alerts, no overrides, no heartbeat shifts. But I stayed up anyway, watching. Not because I expected failure, but because I remembered who would feel it first if it happened. And they were never in the room when strategy was discussed. Vendor 242B, Eastern Freight Solutions, family run, 3 trucks, 0 leverage. They were the first to get dropped when the board pivoted to streamline logistics. I still remember the call. The son, maybe 19, asked if he could still finish the delivery. Said his dad hadn't told him they'd been cut. His voice didn't shake. But he repeated the same sentence twice. We said we'd finish it, we will. I stayed on the line. Long after the route was void. long after legal had marked them no longer under service contract. I tracked his truck manually, cleared him through 3 checkpoints, pushed through temporary credentials from my terminal. At 6:14 p.m., the final shipment scanned in, perfect condition. Then I wrote a line of code, a quiet line, nested, redundant to most. If custodian terminated and contract unresolved, activate safebox. They never asked why I did it. No one knew it existed, because it wasn't designed to protect me. It was meant for the ones who didn't have an org chart, the ones whose names weren't on the main slides, the people who held the load. Safebox wasn't a trap, it was memory, structured memory, locked into protocol logic. It didn't trigger unless the system lost its verified custodian and someone tried to reroute core dependencies without chain confirmation. Which is exactly what they did. They thought I was overbuilding. Old school. Michelle once joked I was writing code like I expected ghosts to use it. Maybe she wasn't wrong. There's a slide deck buried in the system, never presented, titled, People Who Held the Load. I kept it hidden, not because it was secret, but because no one ever asked for it. It's not a pitch, not a strategy, just faces. Photos from site visits, shop floors, truck bays, a coffee vendor we lost in the restructure, a contract janitor whose system key never got deactivated. Each one tagged with a system action they enabled, not by title, by impact. When Safebox activates, the system runs a check. It verifies the load-bearing pathways, who carried them, who maintained them, and who was removed before they could finish. That slide appears automatically, full screen, no narration, no control, just a statement at the bottom. Continuity is in code. It's who shows up when no one's watching. The CTO never saw it. He wasn't in the access group. Didn't even know the logic branch existed. But someone saw it this morning. Jerome sent me a screenshot at 5:03 a.m. No message, just the slide, the line of faces, and the caption. People think systems break because of bugs, but that's not true. They break when people forget who they were built to protect. And they stay broken until someone remembers. That's what Safebox was, a memory structure. Wired into resilience, not for efficiency, but for mercy. The kind of mercy you don't document. Because the people who need it never ask. Wednesday, 9:15 a.m. The banner appeared on the main dashboard. White background, no animation, just text. Custodian acknowledgement required to enter continuity mode. No one knew what triggered it. It wasn't tied to an error. Nothing had failed. But the system refused to move forward. Not fully. Not until someone said it out loud. Michelle saw it first. She tried a soft override, no response. Jerome attempted to reassign custodial metadata to a generic compliance alias. It rejected the input. Carla tried manually entering the CTO's name. The system froze, then restarted the banner. Same message, same blank field. At 10:42 a.m., the CTO called a meeting. He used his quiet voice, the one meant to signal calm authority. But no one leaned forward. No one took notes. Because the system wasn't listening anymore. It wasn't waiting on a manager. It was waiting on truth. He spoke in phrases, buzzwords, technical half-explanations. We're resolving a legacy credential reference, probably an incomplete metadata pointer. I've got DevSec looking into it. But everyone in the room knew he was talking to himself. The system had already made its choice. It just hadn't been formalized. That afternoon, Michelle sent me a message. Short. You don't have to come back. You don't have to explain. Just let it know who held it. Attached was the field prompt. One line, auto-filled, grayed out, Ashford Mo. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't sure silence was still enough. I had built the logic years ago, buried it under a continuity clause no one read. It wasn't meant as a power play, just a final checkpoint. A place where the system could ask, was this person real? Was the protection intentional? Can we keep going if they say yes? The protocol didn't need a signature, just a keystroke, confirmation, the final piece to restore full structural trust. Without it, the system would run but not evolve. Hold, but not adapt. Remain functional but not whole. 3:03 p.m. The CTO made one last attempt. He accessed a backdoor credential loader. Tried to spoof the input field. The system let him type, let him scroll, then returned an error. Acknowledgement must match source protocol signature. Custodian mismatch denied. And with that, even his interface locked. Michelle didn't escalate. She just looked around the room and started exporting reports manually. Carla closed her laptop and said, If he won't answer, we'll hold until he does. No one argued. I checked the dashboard around midnight. Same banner, still blinking. Awaiting custodian acknowledgement. Ashford. No urgency, no threat. Just a system asking to be told the truth. Once. And maybe that's what it had always been about. Not legacy, not revenge, not even security. Just acknowledgement. That someone stayed when it broke, and that staying counted. Thursday, 4:17 a.m. The field was still blinking. Awaiting custodian acknowledgement. Ashford.m. It hadn't timed out, hadn't escalated, just waited. Like it knew the difference between refusal and delay. I stared at the cursor. No music, no sound. Just a white box and a name I didn't ask to become. I typed one letter. EM, then pressed enter. Nothing happened at first. Then the screen pulsed. Faint, once. Then the banner faded. A new line appeared. Continuity mode locked. The dashboard changed color. From slate gray to soft blue. The media heartbeat stopped blinking. Became steady, resolved. In the lower corner, the system displayed a final diagnostic. Custodian verified Ashford.m. Structural integrity, 100%. Fallback protocols retired. Then the line faded, leaving only the system. Alive, independent, no longer mine. Michelle saw it first. She didn't say anything. Just took a screenshot. Archived it into a folder labeled Stability Confirmed. No action needed. That was the whole point. No action needed. Not anymore. Later that morning on Slack, my status changed. Not to green, not to online. Just one line. Thank you. That will be enough. No one admitted who added it. My account was officially deactivated. Still is. But for a moment the status lingered at the top of every admin thread. Pinned. Uneditable. The CTO saw it from his corner office. His screen didn't refresh immediately. Someone had disabled auto-sync on his machine. So the line blinked twice, then settled. He leaned back. Didn't say a word. Then shut his laptop. Slow. Final. As if trying to close more than just a window. That afternoon, Jerome found something in the system logs. An entry time stamped at 4:19 a.m., 2 minutes after I typed the letter. No user ID, no IP address. Just a system alias. JT Ghost. Command line. Initiate Hecate, clone fallback removed. That was it. The Hecate protocol was never documented. But those who worked in core infrastructure knew the name. A last resort failsafe. A way to remove every backup version of a custodian node. So there'd be no reboot, no shadow login, no ghost restoration. Just clean exit. By 5:00 p.m., the alias was gone. Not disabled, erased. No record in the sandbox, no entry in the audit trail. Just a whisper left behind. Michelle copied the log, pasted it into a doc, named it Closure JT Ghost. She didn't upload it, just printed one page, and slid it into the back of her drawer. Carla initiated final continuity testing. System passed all benchmarks. No intervention needed. She stared at the display a long time, then said almost to herself, he never wanted the power. Just the silence that comes after you've done your part. And that was enough. Enough to let the system breathe without leaning. Enough to let the people trust it again. Enough to leave without applause. I closed the dashboard, deleted the shortcut. Shut down the terminal I'd left open for 18 years. No ceremony, no farewell. Just a cursor fading into black. Some systems don't crash. They just outgrow their makers. And if you build them right, you're not needed anymore. Friday, 8:00 a.m. sharp. Every exec at Core Vantage got the same email. No sender, no footer, no trace in the outbound logs. Subject line. Never burn bridges. Just let them collapse quietly. There was no body text, no links, just a single image, a slide, black background, centered in white. Architecture restored. Thank you, M. Michelle was in the boardroom when it landed. She didn't speak, didn't smile, just closed her laptop. Then she walked to the main screen and loaded the same slide from a private folder. Let it sit there projected wide on the walls where so many bad ideas had been celebrated louder. This time no claps, no standing ovation, just stillness. Like the room understood that the most stable systems don't need applause. The CTO resigned an hour later. No press release, no transition video, just a printed letter slid across the table to legal. He didn't clear his office, just left a keycard on the desk. The same one he'd once used to force me out. Michelle found it hours later. Taped underneath was a sticky note. We were never the architects. No signature. Somewhere across the state, I sat on a wooden bench outside a small warehouse. Nothing fancy. Just a supplier depot I used to visit back when nobody at HQ knew what real supply tension felt like. The air smelled like dust and diesel. A teenage boy was unloading pallets. I recognized him. Not by name, but by the shape of his movement. The same kid who finished the delivery after his father got cut loose with no notice. He glanced up at me but didn't stop working. I didn't say anything. He wouldn't remember my face. That was the point. But when the last crate hit the ground, he looked at the sky like he'd just finished a promise he never made out loud, and I nodded. Once, then walked away. Some systems collapse loud. Others, you never hear them fall, because they were never propped up by noise in the first place. Just people doing what needed to be done while someone else got the credit. People who weren't in the slides, who didn't fit the charts, who never made the all-hands video. But without them, nothing moved. I didn't build the system for glory. I built it so that when it finally ran on its own, it would remember the hands that held it steady when no one else bothered to look. And when it did, it wouldn't need to shout. Just whisper, "Thank you." That will be enough. That's all we ever really want, isn't it? Not a monument, not a headline. Just one quiet moment when the thing we built keeps standing after we've gone. If you've ever kept something running while others took the credit, hit that subscribe button. We see you, even if they never did.